The other main subject we have to talk about is while we were watching Excellent Adventure, like a lot of people, honestly, I've heard more and more as people have been talking about their weekend. A lot of people while watching, particularly the third Bill and Ted movie, heard the news, and we did as well because Sherry's phone was blowing up, and I look over, and I could tell by the look on her face something's wrong. It's bad news. And I said, what's wrong? And I had the remote. The remote was kind of in between you and I. So I paused Excellent Adventure, and I turned around. I was like, what's wrong? She said, Chadwick Boseman died. What?
Yeah.
Wait, Chadwick Boseman? Not Chad Michael Murray? Like, in my head, I'm thinking it's got to be somebody else.
I didn't honestly hear her. I mean, I heard her say Chadwick Boseman, but it wasn't clear to me. And like Noelle reacted like, wait, who died? And she said Chadwick Boseman. And immediately my heart, like my brain went right to, oh my God, was it like Kobe Bryant? Because we had that tragedy earlier this year of Kobe Bryant and his wife.
Yeah.
Dying
his daughter.
In a helicopter crash. And I'm like, yeah, his daughter. I'm sorry. His daughter dying in a helicopter crash. And he was in his early 40s. And I'm like, oh my God, was there another accident? Because that's where any person in their 30s, 40s, 50s, like it has to be a tragic.
Yeah, anytime you hear somebody who's dying prematurely, definitely before their time, and at an age like 43, you assume it has to be some kind of accident, like something's wrong.
I thought
especially
he was murdered, something. My head went to a dark place. I immediately opened Twitter and they had the statement of colon cancer. And like, oh, son of a bitch.
I know.
Poor man was suffering.
Well, that's the remarkable thing is that, you know, considering he was struggling with this for the last 4 years, fighting colon cancer, he did the Black Panther movie and Infinity War and Endgame, and granted, he had a smaller part in Endgame, of course, but the idea that he was doing all this work while battling colon cancer is astonishing.
He's changing the world, essentially.
Literally.
Not just playing a character, changing the world, because to look at Black Panther was the highest grossing movie of 2018, and Infinity War is right behind it. And the reason for that is because Infinity War, while it was the most anticipated movie of all time, Black Panther culturally was more relevant, and more people who didn't love the Marvel movies saw Black Panther.
Totally.
I know a coworker who said, I'm going to see Black Panther. I've never seen a Marvel movie in my life, but I'm seeing Black Panther because it was culturally relevant for her to be like, there's a black superhero, and it's not, you know, Meteor Man or something. It's a legitimate it was a cultural. It was more than a superhero. It was more than just another period.
Oh yeah, it's a moment.
Icon. This character was an icon. So.
Well, that and everything surrounding it, not just the character, because that, you know, there's the people who aren't willing to look back beyond the last 5 years and not realize that there were 3 Blade movies, and yeah, there was Meteor Man. I mean, there are other characters you can point to. Spawn. There are other movies where there have been black superheroes.
That movie's funny. I liked that when I was a kid.
Well, I did too, actually. I watched it again probably about 2 years ago, and I think it's a funny movie. It's dumb, but I enjoy it.
I'd love to rewatch that, actually.
I think it's on Crackle or something like that. I saw recently it's on one of the streaming services.
So fucking funny.
It is really funny. And cheesy, but it is exactly what you expect it to be. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's also the idea that it's this predominantly black cast, and, you know, its success dispelled the myth of, you know, a movie with such a prominent, you know, that's a majority black cast isn't going to play internationally. It's not going to make as much money. It's, you know, there was the idea that it couldn't be as successful, and then it exploded, and in that way has made everybody sit back and say, oh, a movie like this can be successful.
Yeah.
A movie with a largely black cast, especially, frankly, an all-star cast. If you're looking at everybody who's in that movie, it's a strong cast regardless. I mean, everybody in that movie is amazing.
Besides Infinity War and Endgame or even Civil War, that is one of the best cast Marvel movies ever.
Oh, hands down.
Black Panther is unbelievable.
Yeah, they really went for it. And everybody wanted to do it for that reason. And it really was that good. And to have Ryan Coogler direct it, too. I mean, the director of Creed and Fruitvale Station. Come on. I mean, what an amazing get he was to have him do that. And
he's one of the best working today, by far.
Oh, for sure. And even when it came to, you know, film nerds like us were aware of Chadwick Boseman at the point when he was announced in November 2014 as Black Panther, because he was in 42 the year before. Get On Up, the James Brown movie, got a smaller release and was already out at that point, but wasn't playing that. I mean, it was playing a few theaters in LA. I knew that, even though I missed it because it wasn't playing long. And unfortunately, I didn't see it until, geez, I saw it in California, so it was maybe 2017 or 18. It may have been actually after Black Panther, so it may have been 2018. Even though I'd wanted to see it, it's just one of those movies I'd kind of forgotten about.
So he
until
would
it
have
was,
been sick during that production too, right? I've yet to get on it, but it's one of those
it came out in 2014, so now not at that point.
Okay.
But that is I mean, they said 42. Kevin Feige has said that 42 was definitely big in making their decision. That movie and his performance was a big factor.
And then he was announced in 2014.
Right. But Get On Up is, I mean, that's a movie where if you watch it, taking Black Panther out of it, especially if you saw that at the time, before Civil War and everything else, certainly before he was cast as Black Panther, you look at that and say, that dude is special. That guy is going to do some great stuff in his career. Because when you watch his portrayal of James Brown, he's all in. And he's way believable. And, he may not look like James Brown, and I know that's generally the criticism of a lot of biopics is, well, they don't look, Joaquin Phoenix doesn't look like Johnny Cash. And, there are very few times that actually happens. And it doesn't even,
they are. You believe it. If the performance is good, you believe it.
It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. It's as long as the performance is good. You need somebody who has the ability, not somebody who looks like, Tom Hanks doesn't look like Fred Rogers. It's okay because the performance, you still believe that this is Fred Rogers. And same thing with James Brown. You're watching this movie and you're like, damn, this dude is great. And the movie is great. And
wasn't Mick Jagger in that movie? Or did he produce it?
He wasn't in it. He produced it though.
Okay.
And Dan Aykroyd is in it. And I know he had a hand in it somewhere. I don't remember if he was producer or what, but he was obviously friends with James Brown because of Blues Brothers and Dr. Detroit. He'd known James Brown for a long time. So he's in there as James Brown's manager, Jack's Hollywood father, Dan Aykroyd.
Yes.
And anyway,
I never hear from.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're waiting for that Crystal Skull vodka endorsement for Cape. Whenever you're ready, whenever you want to sponsor the show, Mr. Aykroyd, you let us know, because look at this face. Do you see this guy? He looks so much like you.
Yes.
It has to be yours.
Were you at Point Pleasant, New Jersey in 1984, Mr. Aykroyd? Just kidding.
Maybe. Were you promoting Ghostbusters? And never mind.
No.
No one's making any accusations, but
no.
We are, however, asking.
Pure coincidence. I know who my parents are. So,
but we're asking for advertising money. We're not gonna.
I mean, if you want to play along, I could totally, you could make a case.
We'll talk about that off mic. But anyway, the shock of Chadwick Boseman, and you know what? It's. I was saying it the other night. There have been a lot of these in the last few years where it's sudden. Whether it's David Bowie or Prince. Kobe Bryant was obviously a tragedy in that it was an accident,
horrible accident,
accident, and
since then, since Kobe happened, whenever a younger person has died, that's immediately where I go to. Of a tragedy, like my mind just goes right there. So, not that I was like any kind of relieved that it was cancer, but it was kind of like, oh my god, like I don't know. It just was such a, because sometimes when you see people die, you don't ever get the straight answer of like this person died. And it's like, well, how did they die? How did someone die at 47?
Right, and there's no public explanation made, which is I would think sometimes almost worse, because then it leaves people to speculate. Was it this? Was it drugs? Was it some? You know what I mean? Because there's so many times you hear about, so and so OD'd, and that's why. I mean, people even say about Prince, like, Prince was a druggie. It's like, well, he was on drugs because of his hip.
I remember sitting at the barber when the news broke, like, how did he die? Can someone please explain to me? How did Prince actually die? Like,
and that's it. Like, there's sometimes you just don't get those answers as much as we want them. We don't necessarily get them. So the fact that they came out and said exactly what it was, and look, even as far as keeping that private, because that's something, assholes want to get pissed off about. Like, why didn't we know? Why didn't he tell us? It's because none of your fucking business.
No,
that's why. It's not. And at the same time, if you don't want to tell anybody, I get it. I've said before, I had a friend of mine who passed away from cancer who kept it private and didn't want anyone to know. And I get why, because it's going to be the first question anybody asks you when they see you. How are you? How have you been? How's your health? Everyone's going to ask you about that. And you don't want that to define you. I understand it. And Bowie, same thing. He kept it quiet. He didn't say anything about it. And that's why it was such a shock.
Alan Rickman, another one.
Alan Rickman, that's another example. And that was another one. Like, what? Alan Rickman died.
He had cancer? Like, yeah. Oh, my God.
Yeah, that's another perfect example
because
of like,
we live in this society where it's like, if you look at it this way, if someone said, oh, David Bowie has cancer, or Alan Rickman has cancer, or Chadwick Boseman has cancer, it becomes Death Watch. It becomes like
Oh
celebrity.
God,
fodder.
yeah. Oh, it's
Chadwick
horrible.
spotted outside of the Hilton Hotel in Beverly Hills, looking very frail, and then you see bullshit like National Enquirer, the last sad days of Chadwick Boseman. Like, fuck off.
Yeah.
Like, so I understand why it's like no one's business. It's like this man was suffering, and he wasn't suffering in silence. He had his family, and that's all that was important to him, and that's all that the explanation needs to be.
Absolutely. So, and you know what? He was able to do the work. I mean, we think about the impact this guy had from playing Jackie Robinson, James Brown, Thurgood Marshall, and then T'Challa, the king of Wakanda in Black Panther. I mean, playing icons, and that's what he wanted to do. He wanted to make movies that were positive for Black people. He's said it in interviews that that's what he wanted for his career. Mm-hmm. And you know what? He did it in such a short amount of time. And it's a shame that we're not going to have him around, and we're not going to see other performances that he would have given us, which would have been amazing, which would have gotten him Oscars, I have no doubt. And he was a directing major as well in school, so I'm sure he would have transitioned to directing.
Everything at his feet. We were just beginning to see what he was capable of.
Yeah, in his prime in a lot of ways. I mean, in as much as now having the juice to get things done, because, you know, with being in the Marvel franchise, you can get stuff green-lit, even smaller movies, as we've seen, you know, other people who were part of the MCU have gone off and done little projects that they probably couldn't have gotten done otherwise if they didn't have the association of being also a character in the Marvel universe. And it's, I mean, I'm sad that the man lost his life. I'm also sad for the fact that we're not going to get to see what he would have given us, of course. And it's horrible.
I feel really sad for little kids who finally young, and it could be anyone, white, black, no, any nationality, who found comfort in Black Panther, who thought, that's my superhero, he's my hero. And now to know that actor's gone, I feel so. That's who I feel the most. I mean, obviously for him and his family, but outside of that, like young people who were so inspired by him he's gone. Like, I don't know how I would have felt at 7 years old if Michael Keaton, God forbid, had died under similar circumstances.
Totally. Devastated. Yeah. No. Well, to compare apples to apples. Yeah. At that age, we would have been like, what? Yeah. He's gone. Like, Batman's gone. And yeah, it would have been shocking to us the way it's got to be for kids who are fans of Black Panther. I totally understand that. And, you know,
there's been people on Instagram and Twitter. I follow a lot of toy pages, and a lot of people are posting, my son has his Marvel figures out, and they're all standing in tribute to the Black Panther. So, like, it's just so, this is bigger than just, it's another Marvel movie. It's bigger than just a Marvel movie. It's influence. And this movie influenced more than, so many young people found comfort in that character. For kids who like Captain America, maybe he's not your favorite. Maybe Hulk's not your favorite, but Black Panther was my guy, and to be robbed of that sucks. I feel so horrible for that.
And the good thing is, you know, in light of all this, and I'm not trying to polish a turd here in as much as like this is bad news, I'm trying to put a spin in it, but the reality is now people will see other movies he's done, and they will see 42 and learn about Jackie Robinson. They will see Get On Up and learn about James Brown. They will see Marshall and learn about Thurgood Marshall and that story. So that is great in the fact that because he chose those roles, because he's played 4 icons, including 1 fictional, then people will now learn more about these stories, and his influence will be spread deeper and wider because of the choices he made, because of the career that he had, and because of the performances he gave us. That can't be understated.
Not at all.
It really, really can't. And, you know, there are a lot of people who have been saying, you know, particularly over the weekend, that, you know, we shouldn't be talking about the future of Black Panther. We shouldn't be talking about Marvel movies. You know, this man lost his life, and there are more important things.
You could talk about it, but there's some websites, obviously, like I believe it was Screen Rant or something, said, now what should Marvel do? Not the time. Like,
well, and that's exactly it. But, I mean, at the same time, when you do movie-oriented news, what are you supposed to talk about? And, you know, I'm a fan of John Campea, who's a fellow broadcaster and a movie pundit, so to speak, and a filmmaker in his own right. But he, you know, put out a statement last night for those of us who subscribe to his YouTube channel and just said, look, a lot of people understandably want to talk about Chadwick Boseman don't necessarily want to look at the future of the MCU, but the fact is, I just want to give everybody a heads up. Look, if you don't want to hear this conversation, don't tune into tomorrow's show because we are going to talk about it, meaning his show today.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that, and a lot of fans appreciated that as well because, yeah, there are people who don't want to talk about it, but the reality is because Black Panther was such an influential character, was such an important movie to the MCU, and T'Challa is such a huge part of it. Well, yeah, that question has to be asked and will be asked because of that influence. It's not being disrespectful to the man because he passed away prematurely and under horrible circumstances. But you know what? The question does need to be answered. People are going to be wondering what's happened, and what's going to happen, and how does this change things? It does, when you're part of something that's so huge, in this case, the biggest film franchise around. And the same question was asked, after Carrie Fisher passed away. Well, what are they going to do about the third Star Wars movie? How are they going to handle this? It is a realistic question. It's not being disrespectful to the person. It's because of what the person gave us.
Context. It's how you can do it. There's a way you can do it respectfully and say, like, we can talk about this. And then there's a sensationalized version of, like, what does Marvel do now? Like, and there's your clickbait headline. There's a way that you can talk about it. So
exactly. And for me, I look at it, at this point to talk about it, it has been a few days, and there is no standard appropriate amount of time before you can talk about what's next for the character that this person has given us. I understand why people want to start asking that question now, and I don't know what Marvel's going to do. We can speculate all we want. Okay. I think this world they've built with Wakanda and these characters they've introduced us to, aside from T'Challa, I think it would be a shame to not do anything with it going forward. Yeah. But at the same time, they could just end. I mean, they could certainly end T'Challa's story with just how, the ending of Endgame and showing that moment of him with his mother and sister. Yeah. And say that's it. And if they want to leave Black Panther alone, then that's fine. If they're going to, I don't know what happens in the comic. I don't know if Shuri takes over as Black Panther or anything like that. Like, I don't know what happens beyond T'Challa in the comics. If they didn't continue it, I would understand, and it is an incredibly tough act to follow. At the same time, I think audiences would be understanding if they did have a different character become the Black Panther. But, I mean, Black Panther 2 was on the docket, for 2022, and obviously that's not going to happen.
Prime release date, yeah.
Yeah, in this form now, it's not going to happen. So, unfortunately, we don't know what's going to happen, but my thing is, if they didn't do anything more with Black Panther, I think it'd be a shame because of what they've given us, what they've shown us with Wakanda, what they've built. But at the same time, I would be okay with it because where do you go from here?
Yeah.
But what do you think, Jack? Do you have any feelings about?
I think, and this isn't just a cop-out answer, I think Marvel will do what's right. Marvel will know what they can do is right and go from there. If they want to continue it, they certainly could look at their options. Okay, how do we continue this? Do we just continue with the other characters? Do we feel does someone take over for the Black Panther mantle? Do we work this into real life? Or, like you said, it had a perfect ending with Endgame, where, I mean, even the movie Black Panther is very open and closed from start to finish, and then the world, not for people who haven't seen Black Panther yet. Sorry, you're listening to the wrong podcast.
But like, first of all, do it.
Yeah, do it, please.
Get on Disney Plus and watch it, for crying out
loud. But the way that they open Wakanda up at the end, and the way that his story with Killmonger kind of has an open and shut storyline throughout the film, it is a perfect standalone film. And then you incorporate him into Endgame, and Infinity War and Endgame, and in Endgame he has again a similar happy ending where peace is made, and it's the fairy tale ending for him. So you can look at it both ways and be like, okay, there is a perfect opportunity to just leave it as is, and then there's an opportunity but there could be an opportunity that we can do something else in the future. The only thing is, no one has like you said, no one has the answer. Marvel is going to know what's right. Kevin Feige, I'm sure in the coming days or whenever the grieving process is over, might start thinking of, what do we do now? How do we honor? And not just him. The MCU is a collaborative process with not just filmmakers, but the actors that they've worked with over a decade now. I'm sure there'll be a collaborative experience of, like, what could we do to honor Chadwick? What can we do to help with the Black Panther? What's the next logical step? and they could take as much time as they want. So there's no clock on it. There's no anything. Do what's best. If you want to continue it, I'm sure they'll find a way. I don't know how. I don't have the answers. I mean, we could speculate all we want, but I have no way to. I don't see it. I mean, if you leave it up to me, I'd say end it at Endgame and walk away. And if you can incorporate other characters down the line in other situations, sure. But I don't have the answers. So I trust Marvel. That's just me as a fan. They'll do what's best for whatever they feel is the best option, and that's how I'm going to leave it at that.
Cool, and I agree. They're gonna figure something out, and
Yeah.
you know, with every production being shut down, then we don't know kind of what's happening anyway. So they can certainly restructure it and shuffle everything that they need to, because we don't know if Black Widow's coming out in November. And I know we're just talking in technical stuff right now. So if something else gets pushed back and replaces that Black Panther 2 spot, it would work.
Well, that's it.
You know,
and that's the thing. Like this,
Black Widow gets pushed to February.
It has potential to be pushed back because everything's been pushed back. So it was going to be a May release date in 2022, and I know we were like, oh, Thor, then Black Panther, and everything else in 2022. Realistically, they might not have been able to hit that just because of production. And I mean, another thing that could have been a problem. I mean, not saying it's a problem, but like Chadwick was sick. So, I mean, his physical ability to actually do the film could have been in question.
That's true. I mean,
we'll never know. Like, we could assume Black Panther 2 was on track, but we had no idea that this man was sick. I'm sure Kevin Feige and executives knew what he was fighting, so this wasn't a complete shock to them. I mean, I'm sure they're heartbroken as much as anybody else, but I'm sure that they were in the know to be like, hey, Chadwick's sick and he might not have another 6 months. Realistically. So who knows what their plans even were, contingency plans before he passed. If there were contingency plans, no one knows. And we'll never
of course,
know.
I mean, we don't know, in as much as he may have tried to keep them in the loop, especially at the point. I mean, I certainly hope he had some degree of closure and that it wasn't just a sudden thing, that it was it sounds horrible to say, but there was some kind of decline that he was aware of. And that he was able to reach out and say, listen, this is what's going on. I don't want to not let you know what's happening because, you know, we have a contract. We have these plans for this character, and I don't want to leave you hanging. I would hope so. And if he didn't, you know what? That's okay, too, because he has his own life to think about, not just what Marvel's going to do. Marvel's going to carry on long after he passes away, maybe even after you and I are gone, Jack. You know, there may be Marvel movies forever at this point. So
I hope so.
I mean, it would be great if he gave them some consideration, let them know. I'm sure that's something we'll find out down the line. But at the same time, you know, we haven't been in that position where we've had to obviously make that decision and say, who do we let know about this? So nonetheless, we love you, Chadwick Boseman. We love what you gave us.
Missed.
And I'm glad other people are going to get to see your performances and hopefully look deeper into the stories of the people who you portrayed on screen. They'll hopefully look into Jackie Robinson, Thurgood Marshall, James Brown, and really that you will have uplifted the Black community in the way you wanted to.
Yes.
I mean, I really do. I mean, we'll never understand that as two white guys. We just won't. We're not going to understand what Black Panther meant and what, you know, these other three portrayals of Black icons are going to mean to people.
But it all opens the doors for Black history. Like, if
it does,
you love his performance as James Brown, let me get into let me listen to some James Brown and let me go and research what James Brown's all about, or Thurgood Marshall, or Jackie Robinson. Let me learn about these people more, because it is all Black history. And Chadwick he portrayed those characters, and that's his moment of Black history also. And just also with T'Challa is going to live on forever. If it's just one movie, or if they make plans to change things, whatever, like we just discussed, that movie will live on forever. That was an iconic performance in an iconic film. And that movie it was the only MCU movie to be nominated for Best Picture, and rightfully so. It's a fantastic film. It's not my favorite, but it's one of the better ones. It's one of the absolute best Marvel films. So it's going to live on forever. That influence will never die whatsoever. So
totally.
Yeah.
And we love you, Bill and Ted. We love you, Alex and Keanu.
Bill and Ted, for picking us up during this whole sadness. It got my mind off it.
It did. For that hour and a half that we watched Face the Music, we weren't thinking about this and the loss of Chadwick Boseman. And again, thank you for taking us out of life for a bit. And, the friendship of Alex and Keanu, I love watching the interviews that they're doing together to promote this movie, because the fact there's a real friendship there really shows. I mean, it's one thing to have chemistry on screen, but the fact that they actually became friends and have stayed friends this entire time, and then have this friendship as the characters as well, that completely shows on screen. And the love they have for each other absolutely comes out on screen and in these interviews. So definitely check those out too, with what the two of them are up to. But what more can we say, folks? That's it. Watch Marshall and Get On Up and 42 and Bill and Ted Face the Music. And if for some reason you haven't seen Black Panther, rent it, stream it, whatever.
Yeah.
And enjoy it.
Yes.
And that's about it. That's what we got for this week. Two big topics that rose out of this weekend. So that's it. So thank you for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, follow, all that other good stuff. You can follow Jack on Twitter at JackWagon85 and on Instagram at JacksonFigure1985. You can follow me on Twitter at CHRISSABALLO and on Instagram at CHRISSELLSOUT, and follow the show at CAPEPOD on Twitter and Instagram. And, of course, the show will be back next Monday. So, until then, for Jack DeFranco, this is CHRISSABALLO, and this was yet another experiment.